Okay, so my name is Aoife Kimber, and I'm founder of Mind My Migraine. And in this, I'm just going to try and move it along. Okay, so we're going to go through first of all my story, and then we will go through the threshold theory. We're going to discuss a number of different diets for migraine. We'll be discussing one of my favorite ones, which is the healthy eating plate. We'll run through the supplements for migraine, and we'll talk about exercise, and then we'll talk about take it back control. So without further ado, I'm going to go on to the next slide. And my forward button is not working. Hold on. There we go. I just have to click it actually, I think here. Okay, so my story. So my story begins right back when I was a baby and when I was a kid. Um, I have had migraine all my life. Um, I was always car sick as a kid, and I always had pains in my tummy going to school, and they are classic signs for children with migraine. And when I hit puberty, then I started to get migraine with aura, and I would have to go home in a couple of days. And so this continued during my 20s and my 30s. But it really came to a head then when I was in around 2005, and I was diagnosed with vertigo, really chronic vertigo, where I had a neck brace, I couldn't look down, and then vestibular migraine. Um, and I had three young children at the time and a spouse, and I was running my my own PR company. And we lived at the time in Silicon Valley. We did for about 20 years in California, and it was fast pace. It was life on steroids. It was high activity and high pressure, and there was always something going on. And I saw neurologists, everyone, and they just couldn't tell me why I had got the vertigo or what to do about it. They could give me medication, which I took, and I still have the medication, which is very, very helpful, but they couldn't give me the big picture. And so then I realized I needed to take my own health into my own hands. And on the left here on the screen, you're going to see a lot of different words here and this is all the modalities I tried: yoga, chiropractors, vestibular chiropractor, acupuncture, mind body stress response, reflexology, TMJ, acupuncture, sacrocranial therapy. I mean, you name it. There wasn't a single therapy I didn't try. I heard of everything and tried everything, but it was only just when I discovered the value of nutrition that things started to change for me. And so then that led me on a journey, and I then decided I needed to go back and qualify, and I became then formalized my training with in nutrition at the College of Naturopathic Medicine, and today I'm helping others reduce their migraine burden, and my migraine burden went down by 97%. So from about 14 migraines a month to maybe I've had about 4 this year. So it's really, really reduced. So, and it's all about that toolbox and being a detective. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. Okay. Now, so the threshold theory, hard to say. So the overview here is that the threshold theory is the foundation for helping you realize where you stand with your migraine. So the earliest report I have seen for the migraine threshold is from a book called Heal Your Headache from Buchholz, and that's back in 2002. And the concept is that the migraine brain is a highly sensitized brain, and it becomes overstimulated. And it's a deficit between the energy that your brain needs and the energy that you personally can supply the brain. So the threshold theory is kind of like, if you can imagine a bucket. The bucket represents your brain's capacity to handle different triggers. And here we see all the triggers: artificial sweeteners and gluten and stress and smoking and perfume and exercise. And we see all of the triggers there. Sleep deprivation. And the bucket represents your brain's capacity to handle different triggers without triggering a migraine. And the water are those triggers. And every time you're exposed to a trigger, there's more water going into the bucket. And so long as we're level, we're okay. But once the water goes over the rim of the bucket, then we're in trouble. And that's when we get a migraine. So that's the water overflows, and that's where the threshold. And some people have bigger buckets, have bigger threshold than others. And some people, others have smaller thresholds and get migraines more easily. And so, I mean, there are avoidable triggers. We can avoid bright lights, we can avoid perfumes, we can avoid exercise, but there's some ones we just absolutely can't avoid. If we have to travel for work, we're in long lines in the airport, we're dealing with the stress of cancellations, flight cancellations, we're sandwiched in between people on a flight, it's all sensory things going on, lots of noise. And I know I personally find it difficult when there's a radio in the background, because I find that sensory stimulation is just too much for me. So when you're traveling, you cannot avoid it. And even visiting somebody's house, it's hard to ask them to turn off their radio or their TV. But the new thinking now is that we don't avoid all the triggers, that we increase our threshold and we become more resilient to triggers and more resilient. So I think through diet, lifestyle modifications, we're going to talk about how you can raise your threshold. Okay. So next one. So there are lots and lots and lots of diets online, and you're going to see them all over the place on Instagram, on the internet, everywhere. And I picked two diets that I think are the two ones that most people talk about. And the first one, you'll see it all over. I think somebody in the last podcast mentioned the Dizzy Cook. Anyway, this one is the histamine tyramine diet, and I actually personally tried this myself. So let's see what it's about. So histamine occurs naturally in food, and some foods have higher levels than others. So, for example, alcohol, cheese, sauerkraut, and citrus. And it's produced when a bacteria breaks down the protein. And it's important because we actually need histamine. It's not a baddie. We need it as a neurotransmitter in the brain and nervous system. So serotonin, dopamine, adrenaline, we need it as a neurotransmitter, to help neurotransmitter. We need it for the release of gastric acid. We need it for our circadian rhythm. We need it in the sleep-wake cycle. We need it also for thermoregulation, our heat and our cold. We need it for our energy. And histamine is, and here's the key, it is broken down in the gut by diamine oxidase. It's an enzyme. And histamine also influences the hypothalamus, and the hypothalamus is a small portion in your brain. It's like the relay center, and that is involved with migraine. But although histamine is good on one hand, on the other hand, histamine does have negative influences in your body. When during migraine, we've got pain sensitivity, we've got photophobia, which is light sensitivity, and the histamine system is connected with the trigeminal vascular system, which is involved with migraine. And dietary histamine plays a role for those people who cannot break down histamine in the gut. So now, and we'll also, one other important point I think with histamine is we notice histamine when we've got hives or pruritus, like itchy skin or a rash or allergic rhinitis. You know, your nose is running all the time. You know that's a histamine reaction. Muscle aches, but it really comes into play with anaphylaxis, where somebody has a peanut allergy, and that's very, very dangerous. So tyramine is they're called biogenic amines, and they're found in aged cheese, wine, beer. And tyramine is metabolized in the gut by monoamine oxidase. So if you are one of those people, probably like me, who doesn't metabolize histamine or tyramine, then those typical foods will impact you. And so if we look at the foods high in histamine. Bananas and avocado and citrus and spinach and chocolate, dried fruit and shellfish. I mean, lovely foods. They are so delicious. We all want to eat them. But if you personally don't manage to break down the histamine, then these foods can impact you. I tried the low histamine diet. It's incredibly difficult. You need to eat, all your food was 100% fresh. You have to avoid all aged and fermented foods. You can't have any fish unless it's been gutted 12 hours within the catch. You need to have any fruit ripened off a tree. You don't eat it, and also any molds or environmental toxins or allergies. You have to cut them all out. And it really was not sustainable for me because I had a busy life. I had a heavy reliance on carbs and starchy foods. And as we read the literature and the science, we see that the low histamine diet has been criticized because of its high reliance on carbs and starchy foods, and because it eliminates many healthy foods. So I think the takeaway here is, if you feel that you do have a histamine tyramine intolerance, that you don't break it down, then avoid the very, very big culprits, the fermented and sour foods. But you want to try and make sure that you eat some of the healthy foods that do also have histamine. So I would say the histamine diet is only for those people who genuinely have a problem or feel they have a problem breaking down histamine or tyramine in the gut. So, and yeah, so I think that's it. So now the next big one is the ketogenic diet. And this is a huge diet. I mean, it's all over the internet, and it's actually been around decades, and it's very helpful for people with migraine. There's a lot of reports and a lot of statistical evidence and reports to show that it helps. So if we start off, first of all, and start to look at what's happening in the brain on it generally, and we're not talking in a migraine state, we're talking in general. So the migraine brain, so migraine is a response to brain energy deficit or oxidative stress levels that exceed our antioxidant capacity. Okay, so what does this mean? So let's first of all start to talk about antioxidants. So what is antioxidants? So imagine your body is like a busy kitchen, and the chefs are cooking up a storm, and there's lots of smoke in the kitchen. This smoke are antioxidants or oxidants. And normally we have a ventilation system, which is the antioxidants taking the smoke out of the kitchen. However, if the smoke gets too thick or the ventilation system gets overwhelmed, then it is hard to take the smoke out. And then there is the kitchen. There is, over time, it can damage the equipment and the kitchen, and there's a breakdown. So our brains are like that. So the smoke is oxidative stress, and the ventilation system are antioxidants. And what we need is, we need antioxidants to help our brain balance between our oxidative stress that we get from all the wear and tear, environmental toxins, some of the foods we eat, day-to-day living, stress, sleep, and our antioxidants, which we will talk about in food. Unfortunately, and I was very surprised when I read this in a report, that the migraine attack helps the brain restore energy homeostasis, which is very sad to think that it's bringing the brain back into balance. But I think we can do this in diet. Okay, so let's get to the ketogenic diet. So the brain has two sources of fuel: glucose and ketones from fat. Ketones are a cleaner energy for your brain. So ketones influence our energy in our brain, in our mitochondria. So let me just tell you, first of all, what the mitochondria are. If you think of them like, they're like ESB, our energy system. They're tiny, tiny little powerhouses in our cells that supply the energy that we need. And they're very, very important. So think of them like the ESB. So ketogenic diet helps enhance energy, brain energy. It helps with brain excitability. It helps lower inflammation. And it also helps with the gut microbiome. We know there's a big connection between the gut and the brain. And it helps with oxidative stress. And here we are talking about oxidative stress again. So the ketogenic has been shown to be beneficial in migraine prevention. And so if we look over here, and I'm going to move us out of the way a little bit. Oh, no, I can't do that. So if we look at the image, we'll see that the ketogenic diet is 75% fat. It is 20% protein and 5% carbs. And the diet works, but in reports, you will see a lot of criticisms of the ketogenic diet. And here are some of the criticisms. It's because there's so much fat and protein, we are then deficient in the carbs, and fruit and veg are carbs. So it's nutrient deficient. It's high in saturated fats. It places a burden on the liver to metabolize fat, and it places a burden on the kidneys to metabolize the protein, and it can lead to constipation. And if you don't have an efficient digestive system for fat, it can be hard to metabolize the fat. So the key takeaway for me with the ketogenic diet is, while the ketogenic diet can work for migraine, in my opinion, it's not a long-term solution because of the downsides. Okay, so I'm going to move on to my next, to the healthy eating plate. And this is my personal favorite because this is deceptively simple. It's like meditation. You have to follow your breath. It's such an easy concept, but it's actually in reality quite difficult to do. So we'll start out. It was proposed by the Harvard School of Public Health, and it's a revised pyramid. And we're looking at half of your daily intake. So the plate is for the whole day. So half of your daily intake in vegetables and fruit, a quarter in whole grains, and a quarter in healthy protein. And we're looking at water. So we're looking at 2 liters for women, 2.5 for men. And we're looking at healthy oils, which are unsaturated oils, puffs and muffins. And we will actually drill down into oils and carbs in a few minutes. And there is a lot of evidence. There have been trials run on this diet, and they're showing 30% reduction in monthly migraines. So it can work. So and the benefit of this diet is that it encourages varied nutrient consumption. It stabilizes your glucose, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. It increases all of the nutrients, and they have anti-inflammatory properties. And it benefits the gut microbes because we've low sugar and high fiber, because the fiber is the food for your gut microbes. And it focuses also on quality versus quantity. So the key takeaway for me in this healthy eating plate is that we all know what a healthy diet looks like. And I'm sure you've all heard of this before, but don't underestimate how simple it looks. There's science behind it. And you'll have seen it before, and your parents will have suggested this diet, but like all things simple, it's deceptive. So we're going to go through some more slides on this, and let's see what you think. So now we're going to talk about carbs, and apologies that we seem to be cutting off some of but for anybody that wants the PowerPoint at the end, you can get it. Okay, so we all know what carbs are, but let's take a deep dive into them in relation to our healthy eating plate. So we're going to start off with simple carbs. Simple carbs are like white bread, white pasta, white rice, all of those white things. Cakes and cookies and ice cream and sweetened drinks. They're all simple carbs. And what happens with simple carbs is the body breaks them down very, very quickly. They will spike your glucose, your sugar, and then you crash. And so then the body then wants to achieve homeostasis, balance, and it looks for more sugar again so that it can bring you back into balance. Complex carbs, on the other hand, they are brown rice, whole wheat bread, starchy vegetables, lentils, beans, quinoa, sweet potato, and chia seeds. They are broken down slower, and so they don't cause that glucose spike and drop. They help us keep a stable. And if you look at there's a glucose goddess. She's got she's got 4 tenets, and one of those is to eat your veggie starter at the beginning of your main meal, which she says is helping keep your glucose level. And the reason for that is because the fiber lines the bowel, and so it leaves the glucose has a slower release through the digestive tract. So so it's quite interesting when you start to see other people from other modalities bringing these in and talking about them, and so they're also helping us with migraine. Okay, so the important thing to realize is that the migraine brain wants balance, and so if we've got high sugar and low sugar and crashes and everything, then that's probably not the best situation. Okay, so what we really want to avoid is we want to avoid like a bread heavy breakfast, a big croissant or a toast or something like that, and then a sandwich or a baguette or a bap or a blah. I'm going to say a blah because I'm from Waterford and we eat blahs in Waterford. And, then when in your evening meal, you'll have pasta and risotto and a big plate of potatoes. We want to try and avoid that situation. So what can we do instead? So we can have eggs and omelette and veggies. And if we need a slice of bread, we have maybe 1 slice of bread. We could have yogurt or berries or nuts. And adding the protein, in particular, adding the protein before 10 a.m. in the morning actually helps with your glucose release throughout the day. So for lunch, think about soups and stews, salads in the summer, but make sure you put in something pretty healthy like beans or cheese or something like that. If you don't have a histamine reaction. Or an open face sandwich. So then you're taking at least one of the slices of bread away. So you're really just trying to balance it out. And the evening meal, that traditional meat and 2 veg, or the carveries are fabulous. I love those carveries. And what I try and do when I'm cooking, I cook 2 different types of veg. And so then when you're pulling out your plate, so you've got your potatoes and your meat or your fish, and then you have veg, but then you have to put another one on because you've cooked it, and suddenly your plate starts to look like that healthy eating plate. And it's a little, if you can manage to peel a few extra carrots. So, okay, so I think the key takeaway here then is that complex carbs help balance out blood sugar, which is ideal for the migraine brain because the migraine brain likes homeostasis, balance. And complex carbs are, for the most part, not always, but for the most part, they are unprocessed and they contain vitamins and minerals. So even the bread, actually, interestingly, white bread versus brown bread, the brown bread has the endosperm, and it has some B vitamins, and B vitamins are really, really important, as we'll see later. So that's another reason. So that's it. Complex carbs are your best friend. Okay. Now, fats. Okay. So fats is one of those topics that's really, really highly debated. And we kind of have this love-hate relationship with fats. And for years, people have viewed fats as something to be avoided. And they've gone for low-fat products, which are generally high in sugar. And it all came from a report back in the 60s by Ansel Keys in the US saying that fat caused coronary heart disease. So let's look at fats now in a new light. I like to think of fats as being important for us. And in fact, they are very, very important for us. Dietary fat is vital for health. We need it. We need it for energy. We need it to absorb the fat-soluble vitamins A, D, E, and K, and for minerals, to absorb our minerals. fats are needed for our cell membranes. So our cells, even those mitochondria in our brain, and we've got mitochondria in our brain and all over our body, we need it for our cell membranes and for the fluidity of for any serotonin to go in and out of the brain cells. We needed the exterior wall of each cell. We need it for the sheath around our nerves. We need it for blood clotting, for muscle movement, for inflammation. So it's it's an important component in our diet. But some fats are better than others. So the key is choosing the right fat. So let's take a look at some of the fats and some of the picture here. So I've got a traffic light system here. So green, amber, and red. So green, we're looking at our unsaturated fats. And I'm sure you all have heard of PUFAs and MUFAs, polyunsaturated fatty acids and monounsaturated fatty acids. So we'll delve into them. So polyunsaturated fatty acids are they are liquid at room temperature. So we're thinking of seed oils, and we're looking even in seeds we have the polyunsaturated, and one of the best sources is cold water fish, which is salmon. You're going to get lots of polyunsaturated fatty acid there, and oil from nuts. They are considered healthy fats, and the reason why they're considered healthy fats is because they have a high omega-3 to 6 ratio. And a little bit later, we'll talk about why we want high omega-3 to 6. But this is why they're considered healthy. So if you're saying, oh, well, why are they healthy? This is why they're healthy. So saturated fat then, so with unsaturated fats, we can consume as these. These are ones that we should consume. With saturated fats, which are coconut and palm oil, I will talk about palm oil in a second, and creamers, we talk about animal fats, butter and ghee, and these fats we should moderate, not have too many of these fats. Palm is one that's a little bit controversial because people say, oh, they don't want to have palm oil. And the reason for that is it's got a high omega-6 to 3 ratio. And that is why palm oil is, it's probably not absolutely the best one to take if you see it in ingredients. And then if we look at on the red, trans fats. So trans fats are fats that have been produced or altered in a way. So they're hydrogenated, they add hydrogen bonds. So we find them in fast foods and cakes and pastries and chocolate. And the EU law now is that the WHO actually has come out about trans fats, saying that they're unhealthy. But the EU law now is that we are only allowed to have 2 grams of the trans fats per 100 grams of our fat. So what does that mean? It means we should probably stay away from processed food as much as we can. So we have to, do an 80-20. We can't be perfect every day of the week, but we try as much as possible to stick to the core principles. And you might ask, okay, so how do I cook? What do I cook with? So for lower temperature cooking, about 180 degrees, we can use olive oil. For higher temperature cooking, we can use coconut or ghee or butter. I actually personally love butter because I think even though it's a saturated fat, it's very healthy because it's got a lot of minerals in it. So I'm a fan of butter, but you will find online a lot, very varying opinions. And actually, that's one important thing to say. When you go online, you're going to find people who are for and against things. And we have to be our own best detectives. We have to say, okay, well, this works for me. I can use butter, but somebody else might not be able to do it. So we need to be judicial in our views of what people say, and do a little bit of research and look behind and maybe ask somebody you trust. So the bottom line here is that fats are good for us. Unsaturated fats are best to eat. We can eat them freely. Eat saturated fats in moderation and avoid trans fats as much as we can in ultra-processed foods. Okay, so now we're going to go on. This is eating a rainbow. And this is still part of the healthy eating plate. Vegetables, and if anybody that follows Tim Spector or the Zoe Report on Instagram or online, they are big on eating lots and lots of vegetables. So they're talking about 30 veggies a week, or 10 veggies a day and 30 different varieties a week, which sounds overwhelming, but if you consider that herbs like thyme and rosemary, cilantro, they're all involved, and you can put in spices, and even coffee is one of those. So it's not as overwhelming as you think. Okay, so let's dive in and look at why we should be eating a rainbow. Blue, purple, and black fruit and veg, in general, for the most part, are antioxidants. So that's we're lowering our oxidative stress. And they help to fight free radicals. Free radicals are these components that cause oxidative stress. And in general, they support heart health, circulation, and vision. Green, any of your green leafy veg, they've got chlorophyll in them, and it provides nutrients that support liver detox. Liver detox is actually so important for people with migraine. It's meaning it's pulling all those toxins out of the body, and it's keeping it's helping to keep lower our threshold when we're removing the toxins from the body. So green leafy veg and green fruit and veg bind with the toxins in the gut, preventing absorption in the body. So red fruit and veg, and I will talk about red because I know red fruit and veg, a kind of an alarm bell will go off for a lot of people. So first of all, I would say that it does, for a lot of people, reduce inflammation, and it's high in vitamin C, and it actually supports the prostate, lycopene in the tomatoes. Now, red veg have a bad reputation, and the nightshades family in particular. So we're looking at eggplant, tomatoes, aubergine, and potatoes. And the reason why is there is a component in there called solanine. And solanine has been, you will read that solanine has been shown to, or as some people feel that solanine has been shown to increase pain. You'll read other reports that say solanine in the nightshades. So solanine, they'll say, impacts digestion. It interferes with drugs like asthma and bladder drugs. Whereas alpha solanine, it reduces inflammation in the endothelium, which is your blood vessels. So there's as many reports for and against. Anecdotally, I have a friend who's got RA, rheumatoid arthritis, who avoids nightshades. But for people with migraine, I think you need to be a detective, be an explorer, check it out, and try things in isolation. If you're finding the nightshade family doesn't work for you, then reduce them. And try and keep that balance. Try and keep that threshold from spilling over. Try and keep that low. So we're going on to orange and yellow. Orange and yellow fruit and veg improves the immune system, the vision. Look at the carrots there. I mean, you've always heard, your parents say, eat your carrots, you'll be able to see in the dark. And for joint health as well. And then white and brown support heart, circulation, and liver detox. So they're like onions, garlic, leeks. And onions, garlic, leeks, actually oats, chia seed and flax, they're also good prebiotic. Prebiotic is the food for your probiotic. The probiotic is the microbe that you get in the sour fruit and veg, or if you buy a probiotic. And the prebiotic, which is your garlic, leeks, onions, that feeds, and your fiber, feeds your microbes. And you want to give your microbes some healthy food. Okay, so the takeaway, the bottom line here is that be aware of the impact certain vegetables has is important, and try things in isolation, and try and eat as many fruit and veg as we can. Okay, I think that's really the bottom line here. A word about organic, actually, before I go on. I personally like to eat organic where I can. I know it's a bit more expensive, but the reason why is that organic fruit and veg, they've been growing out in places in the earth which is not as mineral depleted because they're not using fertilizers and pesticides. And the plant has to fight to repel any of the insects and to repel the aphids. So when we consume that plant, we are consuming the components in the plant that the plant has used to fight off and to improve the plant's, let's say, immune system, for want of a better word. I know a plant doesn't have an immune system, but that when we eat those organic fruit and veg, we are getting then the benefits of those plants, and we are getting the benefits of all of the minerals that the plant takes in through the soil. So that's personally why I like to eat fruit and veg. And okay, so now supplements. So this actually is a very, very interesting component. And I think, you know, with diet, supplements are quite helpful with migraine, and we'll go through them. So we're going to start with nature's sedative, magnesium. And magnesium is fantastic. I work in a health store as well, and every second person is coming in looking for magnesium. It just seems to be that one. Magnesium helps with inflammatory signaling in migraine attacks and helps with excessive activation of brain cell receptors. So it's helping with our brain. Magnesium is found, so if we have magnesium is found in most plants, especially seeds and nuts and green leafy veg. And here we are talking about our veg again. And it helps with nerve impulses and transporting various minerals around the cell and nerve signaling. It helps with sleep and calm and insomnia and mood swings and muscle relaxation. And there's over 300 different jobs for magnesium in the body. So what type of magnesium? This is important. Magnesium can't exist on its own, so it needs to be chelated or bound to something else. So the first one, magnesium bisglycinate, that tends to be the most popular one for most people. It's highly absorbed. It helps, it's easiest on the gut. It's great for insomnia. It's great for moods, and it tends to be that one that most people can tolerate. And I find when I feel a headache or a migraine coming on, I actually take magnesium bisglycinate in a powder form, and it just helps kind of take a little bit of the edge. It's not going to solve it, but for me, it takes the edge, but then everybody's different. Okay, magnesium citrate is another magnesium. Magnesium citrate. Citrate helps draw water into the bowel. So if you have a problem with elimination or with constipation, then magnesium citrate is the one for you. And it's very, very helpful. You're still getting the calming effect of magnesium, but the citrate is also helping you with that. Magnesium malate tends to be for people who have pains in their limbs and their feet. And magnesium taurate is the one that, or magnesium taurate is the one, it helps with cardiovascular, it helps with the brain, it helps with helping balance sugar, actually, magnesium taurate. So we're talking about the cardiovascular here. What that got to do with the brain? Well, we've got blood vessels in our brain, so anything that's helps with the heart, with vasodilation, with our nerve endings, it helps with the brain as well. So that's magnesium. Here we're coming to omega-3. So omega-3 is a polyunsaturated healthy fat, and it's high in EPA and DHA. These components, omega-3, the body breaks it down into EPA and DHA. That is crucial for the nervous system. So omega-3 helps promote vasodilation in the brain. So it's helping our brain be nourished from the blood in our body. Omega-3 helps with inflammation. It helps with depression. It also enhances our mitochondria stability and our mood regulation. Omega-3 is very, very good. And just before the call, myself and Deirdre were talking about omega-3 for our pets, for our dogs. So where do we get it from? In food, we get it from fish, salmon, herring, and mackerel, but we get it also in chia seeds, and we can get it in a supplement as well. Okay, so the next one, vitamin D. Vitamin D is the sunshine vitamin. and it's the one that really helps. It's an immune modulator and regulator. It helps our immune system from being too overactive, let's say in an autoimmune case, but it helps pump it up when we need it if we've got a cold or a flu. Vitamin D, D3 is the one from the sunlight hits our skin and our body makes D3, but we can also get vitamin D3 from salmon and from mushrooms as well. And we can get it in a supplement. And I would say anybody in Northern Europe, in Ireland, in the wintertime should probably be taking a vitamin D. I know I certainly do. And I give it to my kids when they listen to me. So vitamin D helps fight inflammation in the brain, helps the body to, and yeah, another benefit, helps the body to absorb calcium, phosphorus, magnesium, and helps with insulin metabolism. So all of those components are very important to keep the body in homeostasis, in balance. Yeah, why should we take it? Studies find low levels of vitamin D in people with migraine. And in fact, all of these, you will see studies online, empirical evidence that people with migraine have low levels of magnesium, omega-3, D, B2, riboflavin, and CoQ10. We'll get onto that. So B2, which is also called riboflavin, it's one of the B vitamins. B vitamins in general are for energy, and true enough, B2 is for energy in our mitochondria. And mitochondria are the ESB, they are the powerhouses in our body. They're all in the brain, in the body. They're supplying energy. Stress actually depletes our B vitamins. So we need to watch out for that. And B vitamins also helps with liver detox. Here we going, getting out the toxins again, and iron metabolism as well. So we see B2 in a lot of the vegetables. So if you see that you're, let's say, boiling your broccoli and you see all the green color leaching out, you'll know that B2 is sensitive to heat, and you need to put some of that water and use it for your gravy. Okay. CoQ10. CoQ10 is one of these interesting ones that people have not heard about. It's one of those like that your mom or whatever might say, what? What's that? I never heard about it. It is an enzyme and it's used all over the body, and it decreases as we age. So people with migraine have altered mitochondrial energy metabolism. So the powerhouses that are making our energy is altered. And it means that our cells don't give the maximum optimal output of energy. So that if we go back to that concept that migraine is when the brain has this energy demand and we're actually not meeting that energy demand. CoQ10, the benefit in the body is that it will help fight against oxidative stress, and it helps with energy production in our cells. It's also a major antioxidant. It helps our mitochondria neutralize oxidative stress. It helps with energy production, particularly in our brains. Okay, so you might ask me, well, which supplements should we buy? I can't recommend any one, but you'll find them all in your local health shop. But what I would say is read the back of the label. There's a couple of things to watch out for. You should buy supplements without binders or fillers or anti-caking agents. These are components that are added so that the product's going to flow through the machines in the production really easily. So it's like, ooh, well, why we're now eating this. So we need to be careful with that. I would say that powders and liquids are more bioavailable. They're absorbed quicker. Capsules, liquids, and powders. So the capsules tend to have the powder in them. You can open them up and sprinkle them on food or add them to a smoothie. They have fewer unwanted additives. Tablets are kind of like they're pressed together, and they can have additives. They can have, not always. So the ones to watch out for, there are magnesium stearate, talc, which is magnesium silicate. I know magnesium is important, but it's what it's bound to. Maltodextrin, which is high glycemic index, so it raises blood sugar, and then propylene glycerol. Okay, so the supplements can help, and my top pick, if you're only going to get from the top, is magnesium, the omega, and actually I'll throw in a probiotic. Okay. Exercise. So exercise, this is the conundrum. There is a big conundrum here. And so with exercise, the major consideration is, does exercise cause migraine, or does physical inactivity cause migraine? And so it's like this circle. So we don't know. We don't know. Like, there's a conundrum. We've got lots of reports. We've got anecdotal. So we have to be our own best. We have to be our own best judge, and we have to be an explorer. So a 10-year literature review, and this is just one report, so we have to bear in mind it's only one, saw that regular moderate intensity aerobic exercise is regarded as a reasonable preventative measure. But this advice doesn't apply to patients with a personal history of exercise-provoked migraine. So here we are. We're around in a circle again. So let's look, well, what happens when we exercise? So let's look at what's happening on a cellular level so we can figure out what's going on with all of this literature. Biologically, exercise suppresses inflammation, and it also suppresses stress hormones such as cortisol. It also releases endorphins where you feel better. However, CGRP, and you'll know that calcitonin gene-related peptide, that's the new drug that's come out for migraine. So this is relevant because exercise increases CGRP. Blood pressure changes, which can cause changes in the brain. And then we can have a buildup of lactic acid. So if you're ever talking to a marathon runner, they're talking about lactic acid all the time. They're just, whatever, mile 23, is it? And they're talking about lactic acid thresholds. So, but lactic acid builds up. And so this at a cellular level is what's happening. But overall, so the takeaway here on this slide is that regular moderate intensity aerobic exercise is regarded as a reasonable preventative measure, but you do have to watch out for your own personal self. Moderate intensity exercise suits the majority of people, but not everybody. It's certainly, I know for me, if I keep it consistent, I try and walk between 3 and 5 kilometers every day with the dog. But if one day I decide, oh, I'm going to run, not that I can run, but if I could decide that I would run, that would just be a trigger for me. I know for sure. So I have to keep it at a very, very steady level. So that's just me, and I'm just one. Okay, taking back control. Okay, this was important on my journey. And I read a kind of very interesting book. I like this little book. It's Managing Your Migraine by Kathy Monroe. It's by Penguin. And she says the best way to manage migraine is to develop your migraine advisory team. And I would totally agree. It's about having that toolbox. It's about having that team. So here, who's in my team? I've got family, I've got friends, got the pharmacist who knows a lot. I'm a nutritionist, so I've got my own nutrition know-how, homeopath, acupuncture, chiropractor, physio, neurologist, whatever works for you. And everybody's team is going to be different. I kept, and I would recommend a headache diary, keeping a headache diary, and for women, a menstrual cycle diary. And I know we haven't talked about the menstrual cycle, but we can talk about that another time. Keeping a headache and a menstrual cycle diary is really important. I remember having big folders. I would come to my appointments with a huge folder. I'm sure they were like, oh my God, this woman is crazy. But I would pull out the graphs, and they, with their knowledge, probably had more information than I did about different facets of health. And they would be able to see a correlation where I could see no correlation at all. So it's really, really happy to document something. I would say taking back control, a big part of taking back control is mindfulness. So an interesting guy, John Kabat-Zinn, you may or may not have heard of him. Back in the 70s in the University of Massachusetts Medical Center, he developed a program called MBSR, Mind Body Stress Reduction. And this mind-body stress reduction was used to reduce pain severity and it improved quality of life. So it's a 12-week program. It includes body scans and meditation, mindfulness, and all sorts of, it's a toolbox. And I've done that course 5 times, maybe 6. And every time I've done it, I've taken something new out of it. And there are many, many reports online, literature reviews that will show MBSR for migraine. And it has been shown to reduce pain severity and help improve people with migraines' lives. It's all over the world. It's in Ireland, it's in the UK, it's in the US, it's everywhere. So there's bound to be ones online. You can do it online. And affirmations, actually. So in her book, Kathy Monroe talks about affirmations, just at the very end, just a small section. But I thought this was important because it's important to know that you're not to blame. I'm not to blame. I am not alone. I can take control. I have tools and I can ask for help. I think it's important to be positive about where we're going and what we're doing. No, certainly for me and on this journey, this long 20-year journey that I've been on, it's developing this toolbox and it's all additive. So you might find acupuncture works for a few years and then you're at the moment, for me, it's sea, swimming and sauna is working and, walking and you'll find and you'll be pulling them. This is the toolbox. And I like to say we need to be our own explorer. And, we think of Tom Crean was an explorer and he was part of a team. And I think we all need to be we need to be our own explorers and have a big team and add in as many modalities as we can. Okay, so I realize I've thrown a whole lot at you. Thank you for listening and thank you for being here. If you ever want to reach out and delve into your own personal journey with me, I would be happy. My emails and my phone number is here, and I'd be happy to do a one-on-one consultation with you. So